Bonsoir, bonsoir à tous. Merci d'être là à l'heure. On va commencer. Je m'appelle Alexis. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue chez Google. Qui est déjà venu? Voilà. Bienvenue à vous. Bienvenue à tous ceux qui sont encore jamais venus pour ce premier meet-up, en tous les cas chez Google d'Angular, JS Paris. Vous avez deux super speakers ce soir. Vous avez également des organisateurs et on aura un buffet tout à l'heure à la fin vers 7h30 après les questions. J'espère qu'il y en aura. N'hésitez pas à utiliser les micros. Et puis, ben voilà, je passe la main à Sébastien.
Ça, on m'entend? Ouais, super. Bah, écoutez, merci à tous d'être venus. On est content que ce soit un gros succès encore cette fois-ci. On accueille Pawel Kozlowski. Il s'introduira, mais il faut quand même savoir que c'est c'est un des premiers committeurs Angular, donc c'est un honneur de l'avoir ici. Et puis on aura ensuite Thierry Châtel, que vous devez peut-être déjà connaître, parce que on a fait quand même une grande tournée française, on va dire, de l'Angular. Et c'était bien sympa. Alors, juste pour savoir, qui a déjà fait du AngularJS ici? OK. Le public est bon. Donc, ce qu'on va essayer de faire dans les meet-up de plus en plus, comme ça y est, je pense que tout le monde a fait le tutoriel et a compris, c'est d'essayer de faire de plus en plus des meet-up plus précis, avec des speakers de talent, comme on a ce soir. Bon, j'ai pas d'autres annonces spécifiques à vous faire. Je vous en ferai une autre à la fin de l'événement, parce que j'organise un événement dans lequel je pense tous les développeurs de AngularJS seront intéressés, mais je vous garde ça pour tout à l'heure. Donc je vous laisse.
Oui, juste une question. Tout le monde a un t-shirt? Non. Ceux qui en ont, je vous propose de le mettre et à la pause, enfin entre les deux présentations, on fera une petite photo. Ok?
Alors il nous reste des stickers. Donc ce qu'on va faire, c'est que ceux qui poseront des questions auront le droit à un sticker.
Ah. Mais pas trop dit.
Voilà, donc je vous laisse en compagnie de Pawel. Bonne soirée.
So, first of all, hello. Thanks for having me here. I'm really surprised to see so many people on the meetup, and I remember like the beginnings of AngularJS where it was like almost no traffic on the mailing list, and Mishko himself was answering most of the questions. So it's just pretty amazing to see it growing. Sorry for not speaking in French, but I'm sure that your English is better than my French. So, but I understand more or less. So if you want to ask questions in French, I should be able to answer. If not, some colleagues will help me. So today we are going to look into combination of jQuery and AngularJS, which I hope will be a bit of controversial topic, because if we want it or not, jQuery is one of the most popular, or is the most popular library, and Angular made the choice of embracing it or coexisting it. And we will see what this coexistence brings, and how we can take the best advantage of jQuery, and at the same time not hurt ourselves with it. So, just a few words about me. So I'm open source enthusiast. I can say I really love open source. I mean, this is something great for me. But in the sense that like not going to GitHub and grabbing the latest library and using it and going home. But I just really like to give back to the community what I got, because there's so much energy and so much good things. So this is my avatar. You can probably see me on the Stack Overflow, the mailing list, and so on. So now you can connect pictures to the face. So in the process of like getting or looking for the library for myself, I one day bumped into AngularJS. It was like more than 2 years ago, and it kind of this framework made sense. Yeah, I think I need to move it a bit, maybe. Is it better? No. Maybe now? Yeah, it was position. So in the process of like getting into Angular, just I got involved into a community, and they got proposal to write a book, so I wrote a book about it. And while writing a book, I got in contact with the Angular core team, and had the enormous privilege of like trying to help a bit on the AngularJS project. I'm also part of the Angular UI team, and mostly working now on the AngularJS native directives for Bootstrap. And this is I'm mentioning this because we are going to use mostly examples from this project just to see where or how jQuery fits. Because at the very beginning of the project, we decided to drop dependency on jQuery. And I'm going to explain why we did so and what was good in this choice and what was bad. So in the sense, I'm just as a disclaimer from at the very beginning, my role today, or like I'm not trying to convince you that jQuery is bad, or on contrary. But I will try to show you what can we do without jQuery and what are the benefits of that approach. But this is just only certain view, and I'm sure I hope that it will be controversial and we'll have great questions. So the official story of AngularJS and jQuery coexistence is like this, that we are saying, like, if you load jQuery before AngularJS, it will pick it up and it will use it, whatever it means. We are going to see what it means in a sec. If jQuery is not present, AngularJS will use built-in mini jQuery version called JQLite. The funny thing I've learned like recently that there is the JQLite project on Google Code, so it's not this. I mean, just don't think so. So this is kind of built-in things in AngularJS. And this type of story is like, okay, you can grab jQuery, you can use it with AngularJS. This type of message you will, this beautiful, we are working together, everyone is happy. This is the type of message that you keep hearing or you will see on the front end page. But when you start to dig deeper into the coexistence of those two libraries, interesting things start to happen. And let's see what. So when someone says that I'm using jQuery with AngularJS, they might mean so many different things. And it's not always easy to distinguish between bad usages and good usages. Because like jQuery in itself, it's rather big library, not complex in the sense of that it's bad complexity, but it quite complex or rich in terms of API it gives. So the core jQuery itself, it has like a rather impressive set of APIs. You will see all the kinds of the APIs for manipulating DOM, for traversing DOM, for querying the DOM, for reading the size, for I don't know, like the manipulating CSS and so on and so forth. So there are all these utilities that makes working with the DOM sane, or make it possible for us to work with the DOM. And in this sense, like jQuery is absolutely great library, right? I mean, it did for the community something absolutely enormous. It changed our miserable life in a browser to something better, because someone said one day, okay, we can't live with all those DOM inconsistencies, with those insane APIs. Let's put a layer on top of it. And in this sense, jQuery is absolutely great. I mean, we can only applaud all the people who are working on this library. But this is only jQuery core, right? I mean, in jQuery core, we've got already so many APIs. But there's the whole ecosystem around jQuery. So first of all, we've got jQuery UI, which is the official repository for add-ons or plugins or visual plugins. We've got at the same time, like enormous community around. Like if you search for jQuery plugins, you will have like hundreds, thousands of them. I don't know. Like it's like they're everywhere. We've got the jQuery Mobile, which is the set of plugins targeted for the mobile devices. But also jQuery is a certain, I don't want to say religion, but a certain style of writing application. It's really DOM-minded. It really DOM is the focus. I mean, we start with the DOM, we manipulate the DOM, and we live with the DOM all the time. So somehow, in a way, for me, jQuery is a bit like a victim of its own success because it makes the working with the DOM so easy that people approached the applications with this DOM-centric mind, which was quite opposite to the Angular, which is mostly model-driven. So, so there are two things somehow. There is the when we look at jQuery APIs, we can scan quickly and say like, okay, this is the one little utility that I will find useful. This is some DOM manipulation that will be useful. This is some positioning that will be super useful. There is Ajax. Well, this one won't be super useful, right? Because we've got HTTP, and in fact, it won't be. It won't even work because it's not aware of the digest cycle and so on and so forth. So if we go through all the APIs in jQuery, let's say part of them we can qualify them as useful. Certain parts are for sure not useful with AngularJS. When it comes to plugins, the situation is absolutely interesting, and we are going to spend most of the time talking about it. But before I dive into plugins, I would like to really underline this, for me, fundamental difference in the approach to writing web application in AngularJS and jQuery. So I guess you keep hearing this all the time, that the difference between imperative jQuery approach to writing web applications versus declarative UI in AngularJS. But so those are the buzzwords that are like flying over and over again. People keep repeating it. But what does it mean in practice? So because for me this is when we talk about the jQuery and AngularJS together, this is the most fundamental difference. We can say like, okay, Ajax is not working with AngularJS, we've got HTTP, but really the fundamental difference is that the mindset, the philosophy, the approach to writing web application is fundamentally different. And if you have a look at the, I don't know if they are like visible enough. If you look at the little hello world example, which is not doing much, but immediately even looking at those little code snippets, we can see what is the difference. So if you look at the jQuery thing, so I'm sorry, my jQuery skills are a bit rusty, so if it can be written better, forgive me. But somehow what we are doing with jQuery, we are like very explicitly saying what we are going to do in the DOM in response to other DOM events. We've got full control over what's going on. We've got full control over what we are listening to, and we've got super full control over what we are going to change in the DOM tree, right? We've got kind of low-level details at our hands, which is good because we've got control, and we can manage the DOM the way we like. But the price to pay for this is that we need to write those steps, right? I mean, we need to give the machinery very explicit instructions. We are like, you know, it's almost like manually moving the DOM nodes in the tree. So what happens with the AngularJS? You all of a sudden losing all those control. you are no longer in charge of the DOM. It is AngularJS that is going to change the DOM. What you do on your side is just to give it instructions or some hints in the form of directives. And this is only thing what we can do. We can annotate our HTML with directives. And as soon as model changes, the rest is in the hands of AngularJS. It will do good things most of the time. It will do bad things if we don't understand the machinery behind. Or it will do horrible things if we, for example, run into one of the performance-sensitive problems. So there is just this really, really super fundamental difference. Like, I'm going step by step, grabbing the DOM, moving around. I'm in charge versus AngularJS approach when I'm changing the model, putting some annotations in HTML, and letting the AngularJS to render the DOM. So this will be coming back. Those ideas will be coming back over and over again. So let's look at the kind of deeper, because there are powerful consequences of two approaches. And to explore it a bit, let's change. Let's look at some code. So can I open it quickly? Yes. So there is I can make it bigger. There is the example of the fairly standard form where we type something, the state of the buttons changes, there is the number of remaining characters here, and so on. So this is, it's kind of little example simulating Twitter box. So even if it's a very simple example, it's kind of mini task that we usually do in our work. We've got like a form where we need to synchronize many moving parts, and create a list, right? This is kind of standard stuff. So if you look at I don't know if is it visible? Like, is it big enough, or should I make it bigger? Font. Oh no, please don't do it. Wow. Let's try this. Is it better? So when you look at the AngularJS version of JavaScript, I guess there is nothing surprising for you right now, right? I mean, it's just pure JavaScript. There is absolutely no knowledge of HTML in the code, like a pure model manipulation. Where magic happens, where the second part of the logic is in the DOM, right? In the form of directives. So we've got, for example, where is this? There are somehow many moving parts that are driven by the content of this text box, right? I'm typing something. Here is we can see the number of remaining characters. We've got the state of buttons that are changing, and so on and so on. So all those little moving parts are driven by the only source, the only model that is the number of characters or characters in the text box. This is what drives the rest of the form. And if we look at at HTML, this is exactly what happens here. We've got each moving part is being kind of separate, right? Here I've got the number of remaining characters. Here is I'm changing the class to error, sorry, where it gets too long, and so on and so on. So I don't have one central place where I say, like, if you change this text, go and change the number of remaining characters, go change the color, and so on and so on. This is each part is kind of lives its separate life of the model. But when we look at the jQuery example, once again, forgive me if it can be written simpler. We've got, sorry, jQuery. We've got this big listener that is, sorry, which is listening to the changes in the input box, and somehow in this listener we've got update form state method or function, and this function really needs to take care of all the moving parts. We've kind of got one central place from where we manage all the moving parts in the form. So now what happens if I want to add another button? Let's say I want to add the clear button, because I don't have it here. Well, sorry. If I want to add the clear button here, it's like pretty easy with AngularJS, because what I do, I just add the button, and I can manage its disabled state just only based on the model. On the other hand, if I want to do the same with the jQuery, I need to go to this one central method, and I'd say, like, okay, this is another button to manage. So there is with AngularJS, like, each element kind of lives on its own, is driven by model, while in jQuery we need to coordinate by hand all the moving parts. And the other thing is that what you immediately saw is that here there's no mention of the DOM. It's pure JavaScript, I'm manipulating model, end of the story. While here, I immediately go into I'm immediately connected to the DOM. So somehow it's funny, because, like, people used to this style of approach. I mean, this is kind of natural for them, and for me it's like I'm calling this DOM in the JavaScript. And the funny thing is that some people are calling Angular expressions like JavaScript in the DOM. So this is this kind of different approach. And obviously, the other part is that the size of the code is significantly. I mean, here I didn't even implement because honestly, after writing for 2 years with AngularJS, when I started to implement this message box with jQuery, I got to the point where I implemented the form, but, like, it didn't want to go into the list and so on. So in only the form manipulation is already, like, the same size as the whole example in AngularJS. And it's not only about, like, squeezing the code, like making it artificially small, like saying, oh, okay, I'm 5 lines smaller or something like this. It's just this code is concise and it's readable. It's not like horrible code. It's all good. But I guess here I'm not telling you anything new, right? I mean, you knew this because this is why you came to the AngularJS meetup, and this is what you love in AngularJS. So I guess, like, everyone is stolen, like, it's sold to the idea of, like, this this UI that is driven by model, that we just do the declarative model in the we use directives and the model and connect things like this in AngularJS. So this is what we love about AngularJS, and this kind of giving up control or letting AngularJS to manage the DOM, it has also, like, some huge benefits, because you probably all saw, like, how animations were added to AngularJS, right? It was the adding animations like it was done was only possible because it was the AngularJS that was managing the DOM. But this difference in approach has also some other powerful consequences, and especially when it comes to testing. Because as soon as we remove all the references to the DOM from JavaScript, what we can do is just to test controller in complete separation from the DOM. We don't need to read any properties. We don't have to manipulate any properties. And thanks to this, our tests are so much faster. I mean, this is literally so much faster. So this is where we know that AngularJS is good when it comes to application development. But there is this strange thing going on in the community, or at least I noticed it, and I'm not the only one who notices that as soon as we move from controllers or from services and start writing directives, all of a sudden this all knowledge go to trash. I mean, we just kind of forget. Like I'm in the directive. I've got the direct access to DOM elements, so I'm free to do anything, right? Because like when you are in a controller or in a service, you need to put a bit of effort to get a hand on the DOM element, right? You need to get it either from the event handler or use a selector or something like this. But in the directive, it's like this DOM node is like staring in your face. I mean, this is one of the arguments in the linking phase. Like you want to grab it and do something with it, right? And especially people who are like writing jQuery for years, they go into that, like often the story goes like this on the mailing list or on the IRC. There's a new person coming and saying, okay, I did this thing in a controller and sharing a plank, and there's like a massive jQuery inside and so on. And people are asking, no, don't do DOM manipulation controller. It's like off the limits, like it's forbidden. Like unicorns are dying, like horrible things are happening. So the guy said, like, you need to encapsulate DOM manipulation in directives. So the guy just grabs the same code more or less and puts it in directive, and everything is fine, right? Because I'm allowed to do DOM manipulations in directives. But this is like kind of horribly missing the point, because the directives are mini applications. We can, I mean, I will try to convince you that those little widgets or little directives that we write, they are in fact mini applications, and all the things that apply to writing applications can, or most of the time can apply to writing widgets. And I don't know if you saw this. This is the quote from the post of Josh David Miller, who is also working on the Angular UI bootstrap, by the way. And like he wrote this huge post about like how to use jQuery with AngularJS, which is on Stack Overflow, which is, I think, the most upvoted question. So I don't know who saw it already, who read through it already. Okay, so some of you are familiar. It's like a huge rant, partly, but there are many valid points as well. So let's look at some simple directives or some simple widgets like pagination, right? This is something. So rest of the examples will be from the Angular UI bootstrap or like using bootstrap markup. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry. So we've got this like kind of fairly simple widget that that is easy to mark up, that has like some behavior because we want to make sure that the button states are like correctly changed and so on and so forth. So this is nothing like extraordinary here. We could just do it in the application itself, right, by setting some flag and so on. But if we want to encapsulate it into a reusable directive, we could just grab existing one or like written for jQuery or write ourselves one in the jQuery style like approach. And some people did, and I will show you something. Tick, 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 tick. pagination. So there is a project called Bootstrap Paginator, and I'm not picking one on this one, believe me, because there are others like this. So there is a Bootstrap Paginator. It goes like this. With jQuery, right? And I'm really not picking up on this one. That you can search yourself and so on. And this is bad. This is bad because you can recreate it if you really want to go wild and add some checks. You can recreate it in this amount of code. And once again, it's not only about like making the code smaller, because smaller code is important, and we are going to talk about it. But it's not just like, oh, I'm obsessed with squeezing the bytes from the. This code is fine. I mean, it's not horrible code. It's not like I don't know. There's this contest for like the most obscure C program now. I mean, it doesn't look like this. I mean, we can read it. But on top of this. What you can do with many directives, you can externalize a template for it, right? So what you do in the directive itself, you just do pure model. There is no DOM here, like in our message box example, pure DOM. Pure model. So what we are doing here, we are just getting an argument of how many items are in the collection, what is the number of items per page, so what is how we chunk it, what is the active page. And what we do, we just calculate the number of pages to display from the size of the collection and page size. We fill in an array with this, and we add the two utility methods to mark an active element in the pagination. And this is exactly the same approach, exactly the same algorithm as we had with the forms, with our applications. So then we can go to a template and mark it up and say, okay, create me a bunch of LIs with link elements. So it's concise. It's the same approach all over again, but it has additional benefits. So the thing is that, like, as soon as I've got the markup externalized, I can get this directive, this JavaScript code, and swap it for something else. I mean, if you don't like Bootstrap, you can swap it for Zerp Foundation, or if you want, you can add like your additional markup, your additional decoration, or things that that you use over and over again in Paginator, so whatever the other widget. So here, instead of like downloading this 600 or whatever lines of code and being on the mercy of the options that the author built in, you can create your own pagination directive and, like, make it do whatever you want, which is not possible with the paginator, because if you look for li, you can see that it's created directly in the JavaScript code. So there's just virtually nothing you can do with it, right? I mean, you either like it, look, and there's just a kind of nothing in between. So one more example. Oh yeah, the other thing is that, like, this markup that is produced by widgets, it is not compiled by, right? I mean, if the jQuery widget is writing directly to the DOM, the AngularJS directives won't get evaluated, so we can have something that is a directive, but it will just be dumped in the DOM and will be dead there. I mean, just Angular is not aware of this. So there is another example, like very similar to the previous one, but this is the this one. I'm not making it up. It's the question from the mailing list. Like the author of the questions will become unknown to protect the innocent. But when you see the first approach, this was the first. This was what was posted on the mailing list, right? So this is AngularJS directive, right? We've got directive, we've got linking function, we've got compile use, so it will produce the rating directive at the end of the day. But this is what I mean by jQuery style. And it's even like someone even put a comment here. It's like jQuery magic, do jQuery magic here. And it works. I mean, the worst is that it works, right? And someone said, I've written an AngularJS directive. It's all good. But it's not. Because you can do the same thing in maybe the same amount of code, but externalizing a template, right? And once again, as soon as you externalize the template, I can use whatever classes I want. I can use whatever logic of marking the rating on it. I'm in a full control. I've got ability to plug into the whole system. So it's not one monolithic block that is just creating some DOM for me, with which I can't do anything. I've got control here. And once again, like I'm not even. We can say, oh, okay, so let's use this rating directive and make it reusable. But my point is partly that this code for those small directives is so concise, it's so small, that we can just write it for our exact project. I mean, we for our exact needs, and don't even like shop for other third-party plugins. I mean, you can use jQuery, or you can use Angular UI Bootstrap, or you can just write yourself the thing that really fits your needs. Because it's cheap, I mean, it's easy. So, okay, so we say, well, those are small widgets, I mean, pretty obvious. I can redo it quickly. There is the obvious benefit because I can change the template. Well, nothing, well, no questions asked. But here we come to the question of like wrapping existing jQuery plugins into AngularJS directives. And what I'm going to try to encourage you to do is to also try to rewrite them from time to time. So I know that it will be a bit controversial, and you will say like, well, what does this guy want to like us to rewrite everything that exists on the world? But the thing is that for me there are parts of JavaScript that are not worth keeping. And let's start with the very simple the Bootstrap alert that has its own JavaScript, which is I don't know, like 50 lines of code or something like this. I don't remember. And we can obviously wrap it into AngularJS directive, include jQuery, include Bootstrap JavaScript, include our wrapper, 1, 2, 3, and manage this all and have the alert widget, right? Or we can just do it straight away in the AngularJS. Or if we really need to, we can also do a super fancy alert directive, which we did. I think we had a longer discussion about, in the Angular UI Bootstrap project, we had a longer discussion about doing this directive than it actually took to write it. Or you can just simply write a directive like this. Once again, the template is externalized. So if you want to, change how the close button works or whatever, or how it looks like, you still can do this. So my point here is like, there are little things that are not even worth a directive. You can do it. Using just existing directive and not create your own. You can create your own for your convenience, but well. So let's look at something bigger, because so far it was like pretty little things. Date picker, monster, ugly as hell. I messed up with CSS, I'm sorry. So I wanted to have native date picker, but it was in my head for like months. I mean, I was so scared about this. Like, it was like a monster, literally monster in my head. It was like, oh no, it will take ages to write it. I mean, it will be horrible. It will be, you know, like, no, let's drop whatever exists, not touch it. And then one day, there's a guy that kind of came from nowhere to the Angular UI Bootstrap project, and he just sent a pull request with this, and it's like 300 lines of code. And the alternatives that you can find in the jQuery UI, or like the jQuery powered Bootstrap components for date picker, are at minimum twice as big, has at minimum 4 times as much issues opened, and have like 20 times as much contributors. So I think I put some numbers. Yeah. So I think this Bootstrap date picker is the most popular one. So, and this is where I have, honestly, I've got difficulties, because I was so afraid of writing it, because like saying, okay, this is so much logic, someone put so much effort into it, it was tested, it is used by so many people, it must be good, right? And then I saw this pull request, and it was like, say, okay, in the end it's not that big. And I would like to wrap this existing jQuery plugin, because there is an effort. Someone did it, someone tested it, someone probably went through like many corner cases. But at the same time, I see like 1,400 lines of code, and I'm thinking of like tracking a bug somewhere there. I really far prefer to have 1/3 of the code, right? And on top of this, sorry for repeating myself, the template is completely customizable, which means that you can add whatever buttons you want here, you can add whatever decoration, and obviously you can use another AngularJS directives inside this template. So let's go wild for a moment, and let's say I would like to put autocomplete somewhere at the bottom for, I don't know, the bank holidays. I can do this, right? And try to do this with the existing jQuery plugin. I mean, so this is actually the most scary part for me of this approach of like, because it's saying like, let's throw away. Well, maybe I shouldn't say it loud, but it's like this. It's saying like, let's throw away existing code and let's redo it. And it is kind of mentally difficult, but it has benefits, right? I mean, once again, it's not perfect. Like there are bugs. Like redoing everything always results in bugs. We can have as many tests as we want, but we will never replace all this battle testing that people were using this directive or this plugin. They were like, evaluating in different scenarios. We can't replace this, but it's still worth it, at least in my books. So another complex example, relatively complex, why I believe it's really nice to use native directives. So here's the plank of the type ahead, which does the autocomplete of all the cities in US, right? So at one point we also I don't know, Alaska. At one point we also said like, okay, let's redo type ahead, because we want to work with promises. We want to be better integrated with the AngularJS ecosystem, and this is another benefit, that starting from scratch allows you to be closer to AngularJS to mimic its patterns or its quirks. So what's going on here is we've got the type ahead, like this is how you would use it. And if you look at it, you will notice that it's very similar, like the syntax is like very similar to the one used in a select directive. So it was like, shamelessly copied from the select. Because I figured like, okay, like people that are familiar with select, type ahead is kind of select, right? Because you select things from the list. They will be able to use this type of syntax that should be already familiar. The same for working with async results, right? Because like the type ahead that is just like querying static arrays is not super interesting, but so the power is like really when we can call a server and get the results from the server. And by creating a native directive, we could plug on top of existing HTTP service, we could use AngularJS promises, and we could make it like feel like a really one of the native, like the built-in AngularJS directive. So, in terms of code, this is the version that works with Bootstrap 2.3. So in terms of code, it's still smaller than the original type ahead code. I think so, or at least I hope so. You don't need wrapper on top, you don't need jQuery, right? So those things are disappearing. But in the Bootstrap 3, like the type ahead went away as the component from the Bootstrap and was replaced by type ahead JS, which inside has all the transport logs, all the Ajax part is already built in type ahead JS. It has all the caching built in. It has the ability to swap a template built in, which is fantastic, but it's huge, right? I mean, like if you would like to like wrap type ahead JS right now, like the new type ahead JS as the AngularJS directive, you would have to sit on top of all this infrastructure that it provides, and bring all this code back, right, and work all the connection points inside. So I'm not saying we should recreate everything, even if I probably sound like it. We really shouldn't recreate everything, and there are benefits of recreating directive, but there is enormous amount of code that is contributed by the jQuery community, and we definitely shouldn't throw it away. So the only thing that you have to be prepared for is just working on those connection points between the jQuery world and the AngularJS world, and be prepared to work around them, because there is one thing that is probably kind of the hardest to bridge between the two is that often jQuery plugins take DOM as the API. So here is the example from the Bootstrap Select, which someone did really fantastic job on this. I mean, like I would have to work really hard to have such nice directive. They look really cool. They've got like many options and so on. But how you use them is so much DOM-centric. Because what you do, you create this. Sorry, I will make it bigger. You create this markup, and then you say, "Dear jQuery plugin, make it live." Right? So I'm starting with the DOM, and I'm plugging dynamic behavior on top. Why in AngularJS it's completely opposite, right? I mean, I'm starting with the model, and it does the DOM thing. So one of the most, so this is the reason why one of the most, I guess one of them, I mean, it's such a common question, saying like, guys, I mean, I would like to run my jQuery plugin. So how do I know that the ng-repeat finished its rendering, right? Because like usually what people would like to do, I'm starting with my model. I've got my options in the model. I've got my set of options in the model, mustard, ketchup, whatever. I would like to use ngRepeat to generate this markup, and then put the select or the other plugin on top. So we're going like from model to the DOM, and from DOM to the model. So those are just those hops. And it can be worked around. I mean, there is, well, it's workaround. We just simply, we can work with this. We just need to know that we need to give AngularJS the time to create the DOM, and only then plug jQuery plugin. So we need to go through these hops of creating the DOM. And the bad news is that it's often the only, because this question of like how to know when the ngRepeat finished its rendering, it kind of doesn't make sense in the AngularJS world, because it's constantly rendering things. I mean, as soon as you change the model, it changes the DOM. There is no like start and finish point. It's just like this digest loop that can fire at any time. So this question kind of doesn't make sense, but this is what we need from the jQuery UI plugins perspective. So the trick that is most often used is either using a set timeout or timeout 0. So the Angular can render it DOM, and then we are coming back to the JavaScript context in a browser, and then we are plugging our jQuery. So it can be worked around. Well, it can be made to work together, but it requires some. By the way, often it's possible to use the async queue in AngularJS to avoid using set timeout, but so those are kind of pitfalls of using jQuery. But it's like, as I said at the beginning, it's a fantastic library. It really brought a lot to the browser world, to our miserable web developer life. And you definitely should not discard jQuery for all the complex DOM manipulations, like positioning, all the size calculations, so on. Like doing this by hand is horrible. And I know I tried, and it was very stupid idea. Because in the bootstrap we said like, okay, we are going to drop jQuery, so we are going to also we are going to drop, so we are not using anything, not positioning and so on. So I had to redo offset, and this was really unpleasant. So like like do better than me. The other place where it's super useful is the DOM-based testing. So at the beginning I was saying like, okay, let's move DOM out of the JavaScript, so unit testing is easier. But it turns out that many tests are nicely written on top of the DOM. So I mean, we just basically create in the document fragment, we are creating a little bit of the markup, we are compiling it, and then we are asserting on the DOM fragment that AngularJS created. So this is the touch DOM fragment. It's not attached to the document, so it's also relatively fast. And for this usage, the jQuery comes pretty handy. Yeah, also DOM events, like if you want to trigger like a click, key press, or something like this, this is quite useful. So some summary for the widgets. So yeah, I mean, for some simple jQuery plugins, don't even bother. Like, I mean, just look at the markup. If the markup is easy to recreate, like, why to write code for this? Many other plugins can be rewritten in pure AngularJS in the fraction of the code, and I mean, I've got plenty of examples. If you want, we can. Then, if you decide to wrap existing plugins, you need to kind of be comfortable with this. DOM-driven versus model-driven, and what happens at what time, because it can be really frustrating. This is this hate part of of working with jQuery, like trying to wrap existing plugins. I mean, I had like some really angry evenings, like trying to wrap. I don't remember what was this. It was something that gave me really a headache. And And in the future, let's hope that we will have something like web components on Polymer, and all this discussion will be totally irrelevant. So what I would like you to take from this home, that for me, the fundamental difference between the jQuery approach or like Angular approach is not like a difference the API. It's not a difference how do you do jQuery Ajax versus HTTP. This is kind of peanuts. This is the pure mechanics of the API. What is the most fundamental thing is that the approach itself is completely different. It's either model-driven with the declarative UI, or DOM-driven with the really full control, step-by-step. You do what you want, but you pay the price of writing the code for what you want. I would highly encourage you on not including jQuery if you are like starting with AngularJS. It will force you to kind of unlearn something. I know it will hurt, but it will do you good. And for me, jQuery is like medicine, like pills, right? I mean, it's super useful in the small quantities. If it's like if you've got the right dosage, or like if you take the right thing, it do wonders. It will do wonders to your application. Take too much, it will be a poison to your project. Yeah, I mean, if you decide to wrap things, like you need to learn stuff and be prepared for a bit of suffering. That there is like, I don't know if there is like a magic workaround. And size matters for the mobile. I mean, like I think like yesterday or like 2 days back, I saw the question on the Stack Overflow. Someone was posting like happily, oh, I've got my application working. I've included jQuery, jQuery UI, jQuery wrappers, whatever. And guess what? It's slow. How can I resolve this? Move on. Not easy. So because like we can say like like jQuery itself is not big. I mean the size. I think it's the half of AngularJS now, or like, I mean it's not huge, and like it's hosted on the CDN. So download time, we can say like, oh, okay. I mean, okay, it's fine, right? But it's not only download time from the content delivery network. I mean, or it's also like the time the browser takes to parse the thing when it starts up. And once again, when we include jQuery, we've got this tendency to like, we grab this and that and that and that, and you end up with so many different plugins. But that's it. Disclaimer: this is my own view. The redoing things, it's a lot of work. So it's not all beautiful, but I think there are certain benefits to this approach, and at least it's good to know that this is an option. And I'm waiting for questions.
Ah ouais, non, c'est bien.
En français, en anglais, comme vous dites.
Tu parles français, hein?
I can
Un petit peu.
understand.
Je vais essayer en français, sinon je peux le faire en anglais, si tu veux. Tu dis qu'il faut séparer dans les directives la partie modèle des templates. Et est-ce qu'il faut le faire tout le temps? Et est-ce que ça veut dire que les directives, elles sont testées et testables unitairement?
Okay, this is a very good question. Worth 2 stickers, if you ask me. So I think that like the examples that I was bringing here are kind of especially easy to demonstrate the point. I mean, because we've got like clearly, this is the model. We can easily drive the template from this model, and it's all beautiful. But obviously not all directives are like this, and especially if you look at the things like tooltip or popover or all those things that need to take an element and put it in a very specific place, and or modal window where you have to attach the compile a piece of HTML, attach it in one place, attach a backdrop in another place, and so on. It's just like there is a heavy DOM manipulation in there. I mean, we really go down to the DOM manipulation level, and so definitely not all the directives are like this. I mean, there are certain directives that are really very well suited for this, where you can really drive the template from the model. But yeah, I mean, I don't try to do it with everything. Then definitely, like the common sense wins. And the second question about the unit testing, definitely here in all the examples, I was putting the JavaScript code directly in the linking function, which is hard to test like in isolation. I mean, you have to do the kind of DOM-based testing if you put your code in the linking function. But we got also those controllers for directives, and you can move JavaScript code to a controller, have the pure JavaScript code in there, test it without any DOM interaction, and then only plug it and just do kind of some higher level testing to make sure that everything works together. And there's the repository of Vojta from the AngularJS team, like the directive testing, when he's showing here's I'm extracting a controller, so I can test it on the kind of lowest level and then building up. So.
Une autre question.
Hello. Je pose la question en français ou en anglais?
I will try to
je suis désolé, c'est un petit peu hors sujet comme question, mais je crois que c'était la 3e directive que vous avez montrée. Est-ce que vous pouvez aller sur la déclaration?
D'accord. 3e, c'était quoi?
La 3e directive.
C'était rating?
Au niveau du code,
Pardon?
Le code dans WebStorm.
Le code
Désolé.
In the IDE. The code.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Third in the. Okay, sorry. Third, yes.
Yeah.
Ouais.
Can you go to the scope level? Yeah. Vous avez déclaré total items page size avec des fonctions.
Ouais.
Est-ce qu'il y a une raison parce que intuitivement, on aurait tendance à le faire avec des integers de base.
So you can page size. So the thing. So you are saying like, okay, I would use like this, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the thing is that like the page size. So the thing is that like if you use equals, it means that I'm binding to an assignable variable in the parent scope, right? So if I put just 10, it's not assignable. I mean, I cannot. But the other part is that if I use equals, I have to have in the current, at least I believe so, in the current version of AngularJS, you have to put this attribute in when you use the directive. But if I want to have the page size being, let's say, by default 10, but you can provide, this is there are other ways of doing this, but like, yeah, I didn't think about it too much. I mean, there is no deep logic behind it, like, I mean, the only deep logic that I'm trying to make up now is that you don't have to, that it's not mandatory as the attribute.
Hello. You are suggesting we should redo a lot of things that were already done in Angular instead of using all jQuery plugins. And the point is web components are around the corner, and I'd like to know what's your take about this.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the funny story, because the whole this Angular Bootstrap project started like almost a year ago. And I remember a hangout with Igor Minar from the Angular team, and he was calling and saying like, I've got an idea. Let's dump the Bootstrap JavaScript, and let's take the markup and let's do Angular directives. And I said, oh, cool, yes. And this was my kind of crazy evening, because then I was swamped for 1 year with this project, which I love, by the way. But like the 1 year ago when we started this. Is the web components were not like there was no big Polymer announcement and so on and so forth. So like say my high-level view is like I hope that Polymer web components or whatever else will come and make the kind of standard for the widget. So we'll not have to redo them over and over again with different frameworks and so on. Because it's a shame. I mean, there is like, every year or every 2 years there is a new framework. We are redoing directives, sort of wrapping or doing some other crazy things, and we should stop it. But it's not easy. I mean, and we are not here, and like it will take time. So what I'm saying, I'm not suggesting rewriting everything. I'm just saying it's an option, and an option that is sometimes faster and less frustrating. So for your mental health, it's good. So disclaimer. Let's not redo the word. I mean, let's keep it as an option.
On avait promis des stickers pour ceux qui posent des
Ouais,
questions.
non, ça a été distribué entre-temps.
Ah, d'accord, donc c'est pour ça.
You insisted on the fact that the most, let's say, Angular-like approach of doing things is keeping the state in the model. But there are some cases, for instance, if you're, I don't know, using file APIs to if you want a file selector, things like that, where the data is in the DOM, whether we like it or not. Do you have any suggestions?
No, once again,
for dealing,
this what I'm presenting here is for me like kind of, well, I don't want to say ideal word, but like the special case where really Angular shines. I mean, where really directives are kind of mini applications, and there are many widgets like this, and they are. I see them too often done in the jQuery style with the 3 times as much of the code and in the non-customizable way and so on and so forth. So I think it's really worth keeping in mind that we can use this model-driven approach, and many widgets are like this. But if you're like the only source of data is DOM, I mean it's DOM. I mean, once again, I mean let's not try to go into like religion thing or like the kind of narrow approach. I mean this is all. Okay, so what I wanted to show is that this is very valuable technique for me that we can use for many directives. But obviously, I mean, the world is more complex than this. So, I mean, I'm not saying like let's take away DOM manipulation completely from directives. I mean, it's here, but obviously.
I mean, I get your point. I was just asking whether you had any like suggestions.
No, I personally I didn't play with the any directives that like the file upload, so I don't have any kind of deeper thoughts on it.
Okay.
Une petite dernière, et puis sinon on va passer à la suite. Ah ben voilà.
So actually, I can agree a lot with you about the redoing stuff Angular way, or in my case. A disclaimer, I'm not an Angular developer, I'm an AngularJS developer and contributor. Okay. And I do a lot of same thing that you're saying. But one thing that's interesting is so I tend to see jQuery not like something what you build your application, but something like a foundation for a bigger framework. So it's what we did in AngularJS. So we embraced jQuery from the start. So we didn't reinvent an HTTP, we didn't reinvent an event handling system, we used all of the jQuery ones. So actually, what was the rationale in Angular actually to not embracing more jQuery like a low level tool, not like a library to write actual application code, but why not use it more like a framework foundation?
I know. So do we have 20 stickers because it's worth 20 stickers? No, more seriously, I don't. I don't want to go into Ember versus Angular or whatever thing. This is for sure. But no, so you brought like many topics. So when it comes to jQuery being a foundation, this is one of my points of this talk, because like the jQuery is so large. I mean, like as I said, like you can have a person like grabbing somewhere. Existing plugin, and he needs to pull jQuery, so I'm using jQuery in my project, right? But in fact, you are just grabbing the code that happened to be written in jQuery. then jQuery is like plenty of utility libraries, utilities, either for the DOM or not for the DOM. So for the DOM, I said like, once again, if we need to do complex DOM manipulations, this is great. I mean, and I think it's very good that Angular guys did like initially this decision that like, let's build on the actual Angular element has the same API as the DOM manipulation in jQuery because it's something familiar and so on. Then it creates also confusion. But then why not to use more, for example, Ajax? And here the situation is more complex because the AngularJS has this famous or infamous digest loop, which means it kind of kicks in or it makes its magic happen when one of the interesting events happens in a browser. And it turns out that there are not so many of those interesting events when we need to repaint, to recalculate everything, because it's either a DOM event, like someone typing or moving a mouse, or one of the timers, so like interval or timeout, or a network event. This is more or less the only thing, kind of external thing that happens to the application that kicks in the whole machinery. So Angular had to know when the request is coming back. So I guess this was one of the reasons. Another reason I can see, I don't know, it was the project at the time, but the other big difference I can see between Ajax and the HTTP, that the HTTP is highly promise influenced. I mean, the promise influenced, like you see like promise API all over the place. So it's like, more promise than callback thing. But I think this is what I've got to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Merci.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Merci.
It was a pleasure.